There's a particular kind of quiet that arrives after you've seen through something. The job that once felt important now looks like a costume. The relationship rituals you used to take seriously now reveal their small mechanical parts. The weekend plans, the ambitions, the carefully chosen objects on your shelf, all of it suddenly transparent, like watching a play from backstage. You thought seeing through it would feel like freedom. Instead, it feels like you've been handed something you can't put down, and you can't stop noticing how heavy it is. And the strangest part isn't the seeing, it's what happens next. You reach for your phone. You open a new tab. You start a new project, a new diet, a new philosophy, a new spiritual practice. You know somewhere underneath that you're doing exactly what you just saw was hollow, and you do it anyway. Then you watch yourself doing it. Then you feel ashamed of watching. Then you look for something to distract you from the shame. Blaise Pascal in the 17th century sat alone in a room and wrote that the entire unhappiness of human beings comes from one thing: their inability to remain quietly in a room alone. He wasn't moralizing, he was describing himself. He was a mathematician who had touched the edges of infinity early, who had glimpsed what he called the eternal silence of infinite spaces, and who spent the rest of his life unable to stop reaching for something. Work, faith, argument, ascetic practice, to fill the space the glimpse had opened. He may have been living exactly what you just recognized. The mind, once it perceives the arbitrariness underneath a structure, cannot return to perceiving the structure innocently. This isn't a moral failure, it's how perception works. The brain doesn't have an unsee function. Once a pattern is encoded, once you've noticed the mechanism behind the magic trick, the neural shortcut to the old experience is gone. You can pretend, but pretending uses a different part of you than believing. And the pretending part knows. So what does the mind do with a perception it cannot undo and cannot tolerate? It does the only thing it knows how to do. It generates activity. It builds a project around the perception itself. It says, I am the one who sees, I am the one who knows. And in that move, something quietly dangerous happens. The void, which was just a fact, becomes an identity. The despair becomes a credential. The suffering becomes proof that you're not asleep like the others. This is the trap underneath the trap. Because now peace becomes suspect. If you felt content, wouldn't that mean you'd gone back to sleep? If you stopped suffering, wouldn't that mean you'd stopped seeing? So the mind learns very quietly to maintain the crisis. Not because it enjoys pain, but because pain has become evidence of authenticity. Equanimity would feel like betrayal of the truth you worked so hard to face. And then the distractions return. Not the innocent ones. Those are gone forever. The new distractions are more sophisticated. More books on impermanence. More podcasts about consciousness. More meditation apps. More research into the patterns you've already seen. Each one promises to complete the seeing, to finally make it bearable. Each one is the same reaching that Pascal described, just dressed in the language of awakening. The escalation looks like depth. It feels like progress. It is actually the same loop, refined. You might recognize this in the meditator who had one quiet morning years ago and has been chasing it ever since, terrified of it and terrified of losing the chase. In the ex-religious person who cannot return to belief, no matter how much they ache for it, because the doubt has become automatic, structural, beneath the level of choice. In the engineer who understands exactly how the feed is engineered and scrolls it anyway, with full awareness, which somehow makes the scrolling feel worse rather than stop it. In the parent who sees in real time, the inherited pattern repeating in their own voice and watches themselves complete the sentence anyway. In the employee who sees clearly through the performance of the meeting and still performs because the alternative is economic ruin, and so the seeing just becomes a low, constant hum of private rage. In the person who reached the financial number that was supposed to mean freedom and discovered that the knowledge that money wouldn't fix it had become its own new thing that wouldn't be fixed. In the philosophy student who read the book that broke the spell and has been trying ever since to find a book that puts it back. The pattern underneath all of these is the same one Pascal described from his quiet room. Consciousness, once it sees the arbitrariness of any structure it lives inside, cannot uncreate the seeing, and the mind, unable to tolerate the seeing, builds a new structure on top of it, usually a structure made of more seeing. The cure becomes the disease. The awareness becomes the prison. The thing you reach for to free you becomes the thing you cannot put down. Notice what this is not. It is not a flaw in you. It is not evidence that you went too far or thought too much or should have stayed asleep. It is the natural behavior of a nervous system that evolved to detect patterns and was never designed to tolerate detecting the pattern of its own pattern detection. The recursion is not your fault. The exhaustion is not your fault. The reaching for the next thing, even when you know the next thing will not work, is not your fault. It is, however, the pattern. And the pattern has a shape, and the shape can be seen, and seeing the shape is different from being inside it without knowing. You don't have to fix this tonight. You don't have to find the answer Pascal couldn't find. You don't have to convert the seeing into freedom or peace or any other arrival. You can simply notice that the heaviness you've been carrying is not a personal verdict. It is the weight of a consciousness that learned to see and then turned the seeing on itself. Other people have carried it. One of them sat in a room 400 years ago and wrote it down so you would know you were not the first. You are not broken for being unable to unsee. You are not failing for reaching. You are inside an old human shape, and now quietly you can see its edges.